agosto, es una producción de Netflix en sección oficial en competición. One of the best action movies in the history. Now you have a horror film, an incredible horror film, Apostle. This is the press conference for you.
About the horror, your relation with the genre, and specifically this movie, and maybe you can say something.
Growing up, my father was like responsible for a lot of the films I got to see, and so when we were kids growing up, it was mainly sort of action cinema or sort of my dad was never really a fan of horror, so horror films didn't really come into our home when I was a really young child. So I didn't really get to sort of know much about the genre until I was sort of in my early teens, really, when I was able to kind of go out and sneak around and watch them myself. So a lot of my childhood was spent being afraid of the artwork for horror films. So as a kid, it was seeing in the video store box art for Nightmare on Elm Street and those films, being just terrified by the images. And then I just realized when I was like 8, 9 years old, and I was at a friend's house, and they were watching Jaws. And so Jaws for me was something that really kind of like stuck in my memory, and I couldn't shake it off for a really long time. My parents had no idea I was watching it, but there I was as an 8-year-old boy being absolutely terrified of ever going into the ocean again. So that would be my earliest memory of the horror genre. Blister was going to be my next film after The Raid 2. It was a more contemporary action film that was going to be set in the US. We were developing it for quite a while, but then we had like a number of different issues, scheduling conflicts along the way that kind of stopped that film from happening. And so after 2 years of trying to set that up, I was living back in Wales and realising I really wanted to kind of get out there and make a film because I hadn't made one for 2 years. And so that gave birth to Apostle.
The sector in Wales, everybody admired these astonishing films that had come from a Welsh director out of Indonesia. And when news came that Gareth had sort of come back to Wales, it was a very, very exciting time. Everybody sort of waiting to see what he was going to do next. So the opportunity to work with him, both for myself but also for the wider sector, amazing crew and practitioners who were already in Wales, was hugely exciting.
I think you did a precious job, but especially you did a great job on music and sound. Can you tell us more on this topic? What were you looking for?
Probably for me the fourth collaboration with myself and actually fifth, I think, with Arya Prayogi and Fajar Yuskaman. They are the sound designers and the composers for the film. I've worked with them since my first film out in Indonesia, Merantau, and they worked on the Raid films and then also the Safe Haven short we did for VHS2. They kind of mixed up their styles because obviously they're Indonesian and they bring a certain style of their own in terms of the music, but it was interesting for them to be able to dive into things like the British folk horror genre, but then to mix that with certain sort of American style of music, Cajun style of music. So when we called, for example, we wanted that music to feel like it took a lot of different influences, a lot of different styles. They chose to kind of use instruments in a sort of very sort of rustic way as well. So we looked at the idea of using instruments unconventionally, and Ogi, as we call him, he's a self-professed terrible violinist. And so when we were doing a sequence like the Heathen Stand, and we wanted that sort of in and out of tune violin work, that's where Ogi came into his element then, and he got to play that violin pretty horribly on purpose, which was really nice for that. A very, very talented sort of like session musicians out in Indonesia that would then, when they went back to Indonesia after spending 6 months with me in Wales designing it, they went out to Indonesia to work with violinists and cellists out there to record the final versions of the more beautiful orchestration that they created. Right after this, I'm going back into pre-production on a TV series that's a contemporary set in London called Gangs of London. That's for Sky and HBO and Cinemax. And that show is sort of contemporary action thriller about crime and politics and police in London. So that's going to carry some of that DNA over a little bit. We've been designing the action for the last 12 to 13 weeks now for the series. But straight after that, once that's finished, myself and Ed have been talking about teaming up again to do another film, hopefully at the top of 2020. And that won't be martial arts, but what it will be is sort of my love letter to the sort of John Woo, Ringo Lam, Milky Way, heroic bloodshed genre. So that'll be a fun one as well.
Tengo dos preguntas. La primera es con respecto, si por ejemplo la violencia es muy diferente a la que tenía por ejemplo de Rey, aquí es menos coreografiada, mucho más cruda. Lo que tenía que ver con Netflix, con la parte buena que tiene el hecho de que gracias a Netflix pues llegan a más público, pero a mí por ejemplo me da la sensación de que esta película se disfruta mucho más en pantalla grande que en televisor.
Hot one? Yeah, the violence in this is obviously very, very different from the violence in the Raid film. And so we shot that very, very differently from how we would shoot the sequence with the mangle and the grinder. So when it came to the Heathen stand, because it was about pain and because it was talking about the sort of the overthrowing of the village, that there was going to be this new, almost brutal dictatorship led by Quinn, that I wanted to use that sequence to show what the community would feel about that, and sort of say something about how they might have followed the sort of the faith, but there's a fear in their eyes, so that when we see this horrible event happening, I will give you a full understanding of how the mechanism of that machine works. But then when it comes to the actual act of it, I'm going to cut to see people's reactions. I'm going to cut to see the hurt of the people and the heartache of the people. So even when it's still going on, we're at the feet, we're not at the front. So that was dictated to me how I was going to shoot that sequence. When it came to the grinder sequence with the mangle machine, that one was very much a sort of a horror action beat. It was one-on-one, and it was about survival, kind of like what you would see in something like Wrong Turn, those types of movies. And so I wanted that sequence allowed me to use the same sort of filmmaking DNA as I did in the Raid films. So that's why it became more shot specific and more kinetic. And then when it came to the influences, I would say definitely I wanted to watch a lot of the old British folk horror again, to try to kind of get a feel for the aesthetic of those films, because they have a very specific look and feel. Even the behaviour of the characters is very specific. And in those sort of folk horror films, there's just something about the world that you're going into that from frame one you feel unsettled, you feel uncomfortable. And so that was, rewatching films like The Wicker Man, The Witchfinder General, and then Ken Russell's The Devils, which I'd never seen before until 2016, was completely blown away by it, which is an incredible, incredible movie. Needs to be released uncut, actually. And then there was also then more modern versions of the folk horror films. So Ben Wheatley's films like Kill List and A Field in England were massive influences on me in terms of that. And I remember watching A Field in England when we were making The Raid 2 and being just completely haunted. Shot of Reece Shearsmith coming out of a tent, traumatized, and it was such a haunting image, and just stuck with me for ages. So yeah, it was quite fun actually to go back and rewatch all those films. But they were the main influences. Knowing the sort of history of how we tried to set this film up, is that this was the only way we'd ever get this film made. We tried traditional distribution, fully supported us from the ground up. And so when I get asked about it, it's absolutely beautiful that we can show this film here at this festival, and I'm hugely thankful, obviously, to the rest of the festival for being able to let us show it here. But it's a sign of Netflix's willingness to be able to kind of get it shown on the big screen as well. They want these films to be made to fulfill the biggest screen possible and the loudest sound possible as well. But the reality is this. I've been in an awful lot of cinemas in the UK watching films that I've really admired by peers of mine, independent cinema films, where I've gone to see them on opening weekend and been sat in a screen with 6 other people. That's the painful part of where the industry's kind of gone a little bit now in terms of that. But I think back on my childhood in the 80s, and I think back on all of the classic films that kind of shaped me and made me fall in love with cinema. I think back of like The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, The Wild Bunch, Godfather, Evil Dead 2, and even all the Coen Brothers films, or even early works of Tarantino and stuff like that. All of those films I saw on a television which was in a VHS, which was pan and scan and mono sound. But they transported me anyway. And the fact that we now have 4K in our home, well, sort of 4K. Now that we have big screens and loudspeakers in our homes, that disparity, although nothing will ever beat being in a room full of people watching a film projected, of course not, but the disparity is not quite so far apart anymore. And so, yeah, I'm just very grateful that I got supported to be able to put whatever weird, absurd vision was in my head up on the screen, but that it'll roll out globally on October 12th, and everyone gets to tell me whether they loved or hated it. So yeah, I think it's a good thing. So I think when I first decided I wanted to make this film, I remember giving everyone a call and saying, that's all I really said, it's just a horror film. And so I'm pretty sure, and I love my agents, I love my manager, but I'm pretty sure they were all sort of rubbing their hands thinking, great, it's going to do a commercial horror film. And then my next email was, it's 1905, England. So I'm sure they were like, oh, God, but they got on board. That was probably the only kind of sort of any indication of it. I've been very, very, very fortunate to have had a really great working experience with the guys at XYZ Films, who have basically sort of backed me from word go. They were there before the Raid one. They were handling sales on Miranda, the first film I did in Indonesia. And I've talked about it before in the past, but we initially tried to set up what was the Raid 2 first, before it was had any connection to the Raid as a franchise. And so, I developed that with them, a version of that story. And so we had pursued that, we tried to develop it, we tried to get the funding for it. Based off Miranda, we couldn't get the kind of pre-sales we needed to pay for a film that size to be made. So then we went and did the Raid 1 together. And so that history between myself and XYZ has been going for an awful long time. Todd Brown from Twitch Film, back when his Twitch Film was Screen Anarchy now, was the one that introduced me to them, and I've known him for years as well. So I have this real long history with them, and they've always been the kind of people that would be supportive of wherever direction I wanted to go in. And so there's never really been a moment where it's been like, you sure you don't want to just do another martial arts action film? So that was a nice bit of support from that side. And I guess I don't know if Ed, you want to mention about what you might have expected or what I actually ended up doing.
I mean, it instilled so much confidence in the team around you. So we were all huge fans of the Raid, and obviously when I read the screenplay for Apostle, I could see it was a very profoundly different film. But actually sitting with Gareth and talking about the film that he saw and hearing that passion for it, you knew you were going along for a hell of a ride with this one. I mean, there were days, I think, on Apostle, and Gareth can tell me whether I'm right or not, where we were deep into actually how Gareth and Matt Flannery, DOP, who's out there, how they approached those kinetic sequences, and that was it was sort of mind blowing for a lot of us. But no, there was never a sense of, oh, why isn't it the Raid 3? It was, we're making Apostle. It was terrific.
None of the stuff that I had the pleasure of making out in Indonesia or here would have been possible without his eye for it. So yeah, just shout out to that.